You thought they were weak, quiet, or easy to dismiss. But when you misjudge an INFJ, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. They may stay silent at first, but deep inside, they're already seeing everything you don't want them to notice. In this video, I'll show you exactly what happens when someone underestimates an INFJ and why it always backfires. Stay until the end because you'll discover the one move INFJs make that shocks everyone. If you've ever been misjudged, this video is for you, so make sure to subscribe and let's get started. They store everything in silence. One of the most underestimated traits of an INFJ is their silence. People often mistake it for passivity, weakness, or indifference, but in reality, it's one of their most powerful weapons. While others rush to speak, explain, or defend themselves, the INFJ listens carefully, absorbing every detail. They notice your tone of voice, your body language, and even the tiny inconsistencies between what you say and how you act. What seems like a quiet moment on the outside is actually a recording session in their mind where they log every piece of information that might matter later. This ability to stay silent while collecting data is what makes INFJs so disarming. Manipulators, liars, or people who underestimate them think they've gotten away with something, but they don't realize the INFJ is already storing it for later. And when the time comes, the INFJ doesn't just react emotionally, they respond with the weight of everything they've remembered. Their silence is not empty, it's strategy. What shocks most people is the precision with which INFJs bring up these stored details. You might have forgotten what you said weeks or months ago, but they haven't. They can recall the exact moment when your words didn't align with your actions, or when you made a promise you never kept. And because they've waited, observed, and stored everything quietly, when they finally reveal what they know, it leaves others stunned and defenseless. The real reason people misjudge INFJs is that they confuse silence with ignorance. But silence isn't ignorance, it's awareness. It's their way of protecting themselves while giving you enough space to reveal who you truly are. By the time you realize they've been watching all along, it's too late. Their silence has already outsmarted you, and you've handed them the truth without even knowing it. They outsmart through observation. INFJs don't outsmart people by being the loudest in the room or forcing their opinions onto others. Instead, they rely on their greatest strength, observation. While most people are busy talking, defending themselves, or trying to impress, the INFJ quietly studies the situation. They notice body language shifts, tone fluctuations, and contradictions between what someone says and what they actually do. This ability to absorb every small detail allows them to see through lies and manipulation long before others even suspect something is off. What makes INFJs especially powerful is the patience with which they observe. They don't rush to conclusions, they wait. They allow people to reveal themselves over time. In fact, the longer you're around an INFJ, the more information you unknowingly hand over. It could be the way you always change the subject when certain topics come up, or how your mood shifts in subtle but consistent ways. To the INFJ, these are not random quirks. They are clues, puzzle pieces that eventually reveal the whole picture of who you really are. This sharp observational skill often catches people off guard. Someone might think they've successfully fooled an INFJ, but then suddenly the INFJ says something that cuts straight to the core. A single, well-timed comment or observation can leave the other person stunned because it exposes something they thought they had hidden. And the INFJ doesn't do this to show off, they do it to protect themselves and to decide whether or not you deserve a place in their inner circle. What shocks manipulative people most is that INFJs rarely need to argue. They don't have to raise their voices or prove their point. Their observation alone gives them the upper hand. By the time they act, they've already seen enough to know the truth. This makes INFJs difficult to deceive and nearly impossible to manipulate in the long run. Their ability to outsmart others through observation isn't about control, it's about clarity. They see things as they are, not as people pretend them to be. And that's why so many underestimate INFJs at first, only to later realize they were being quietly outmaneuvered the entire time. They turn kindness into a filter. One of the most underestimated traits of INFJs is their kindness. To outsiders, this may look like weakness or naivety, but in reality, it's one of their most powerful strategies. INFJs use kindness as a deliberate filter to see who people really are. When they extend warmth, empathy, or genuine care, they aren't blindly giving away pieces of themselves. They're watching carefully to see how the other person responds. A manipulative person, for example, will take that kindness and immediately try to exploit it. They'll push boundaries, make more demands, or try to guilt trip the INFJ into doing even more. But this reaction tells the INFJ everything they need to know. Instead of confronting it outright, the INFJ files it away, recognizing that this person doesn't respect their generosity. Eventually, they'll quietly detach, leaving the manipulator confused about what went wrong. On the other hand, those who treat an INFJ's kindness with respect and reciprocity are allowed deeper into their circle. For INFJs, kindness is never just about being nice. It's about creating a mirror that exposes people's true character. If someone is genuine, that kindness strengthens the bond. If someone is fake, it exposes them sooner than they expect. This subtle filtering method is why INFJs rarely waste years in toxic relationships without eventually noticing the signs. Even if it takes time, their kindness brings out the best or worst in others, giving them clarity about who deserves their trust. To the untrained eye, it looks like INFJs are simply too nice. But to those who understand, it's clear that kindness is their way of sorting out the authentic from the opportunistic. In the end, INFJs aren't being naive. They're being strategic. Their kindness is both armor and a test, a way to invite people to reveal themselves without confrontation. And once they see the truth, there's no going back. They use withdrawal as power. For most people, withdrawal feels like running away or giving up. But for INFJs, pulling back is not weakness, it's a deliberate move of power. When they sense dishonesty, manipulation, or disrespect, they don't explode or cause a scene. Instead, they withdraw quietly. And this silence often shakes people far more than an argument ever could. Why? Because withdrawal creates uncertainty. When someone yells, you know exactly what they think. When someone explains, you can prepare a defense. But when an INFJ steps back into silence, you're left alone with your own conscience. The absence of their energy forces you to reflect on what you did wrong, and that unsettles people deeply. It makes them question themselves, replay past conversations, and wonder what truth the INFJ already saw. This ability to use withdrawal as strategy comes from the INFJ's emotional depth. They know that arguing drains energy, and explaining themselves to someone who doesn't want to understand is wasted effort. Instead, they conserve their strength, pulling away until the other person reveals their true intentions. Withdrawal isn't about punishment, it's about clarity. And here's the part that shocks most people. Once an INFJ withdraws, it's rarely temporary. Many hope they'll get over it and return, but INFJs don't withdraw lightly. It usually means they've already made a decision internally, and by the time others notice the silence, the INFJ has already detached emotionally. This is why their withdrawal feels so final and powerful. Fake friends, manipulators, and even partners often underestimate this move. They assume the INFJ will keep giving chances, keep forgiving, or keep explaining. But instead, the INFJ steps into silence, and their relationship is never the same again. Their withdrawal leaves a void that exposes who truly valued the connection and who only took it for granted. In this way, withdrawal becomes one of the INFJ's sharpest tools. It protects their energy, delivers the strongest message without words, and ensures they never stay trapped in cycles of manipulation or disrespect. For those on the receiving end, it's not just silence, it's the loudest answer they'll ever get. They outlast manipulators. One of the most underestimated strengths of INFJs is their ability to simply outlast people who try to manipulate them. Manipulators thrive on reaction. They want quick responses, emotional outbursts, or impulsive decisions they can twist to their advantage. But INFJs rarely give them that satisfaction. Instead, they let the manipulator run in circles, burning their own energy, while the INFJ quietly observes, waits, and endures. This endurance isn't passive. It's a conscious strategy. INFJs know that emotional games are unsustainable. People can only wear a mask or keep up manipulation for so long before cracks start to show. By refusing to react immediately, the INFJ stretches the timeline, allowing the manipulator's facade to collapse under its own weight. They'll notice the inconsistencies, the subtle shifts in tone, the contradictions that inevitably emerge where others get tangled in the drama. INFJs remain still, almost like a mirror that reflects the manipulator's behavior back at them. This patience often unnerves manipulators. They expect pushback, denial, or confrontation, something they can control or redirect. But when the INFJ stays calm and doesn't bite, the manipulator loses leverage. Silence becomes suffocating, delays in reaction feel like resistance. The absence of drama denies them the fuel they need to stay in power. And here's the powerful truth. INFJs don't just outlast manipulators in a single moment. They do it over time. They conserve their energy while the manipulator wastes theirs trying to force a response. Eventually, the INFJ's quiet resilience makes the manipulator tire out and expose themselves. By the time the game is obvious to everyone, the INFJ is already 2 steps ahead, having anticipated the outcome long before others even noticed something was wrong. This ability to outlast isn't about stubbornness, it's about endurance paired with insight. INFJs know their own emotional depth, and instead of being drained by manipulation, they use it as a test. Who's willing to show their true self over time? Who reveals their intentions when patience is applied? In the end, manipulators discover that INFJs can't be rushed, can't be fooled, and most importantly, can't be broken by short-term gain. Their strength lies in the long game. While others get exhausted, INFJs stand firm, proving that sometimes the greatest way to win is simply to last longer than the person trying to pull you down. They mirror your true self. One of the most unsettling abilities INFJs have is their natural tendency to act like a mirror. When you interact with them, it often feels like you're looking directly at yourself. This isn't because they're pretending or copying you, it's because their empathy and intuition allow them to reflect back the exact energy, emotions, and intentions you bring into the interaction. If you're genuine, kind, and authentic, an INFJ will amplify those qualities and make you feel deeply understood. But if you're hiding behind lies, manipulation, or fake positivity, they will reflect those cracks right back at you without saying a word. It's not confrontational, but it can feel piercing. People often walk away from conversations with INFJs feeling exposed, as though their inner self has been revealed in a way they didn't expect. This mirroring ability isn't just about empathy, it's a subtle psychological power. INFJs can pick up on unspoken truths and then embody them in their responses, body language, or silence. For example, if you approach them with hidden hostility, they may suddenly go cold, making you feel the very discomfort you tried to disguise. If you're insecure but pretending to be confident, they'll quietly reflect that insecurity until you start second-guessing yourself. This leaves people rattled because it strips away their defenses and forces them to face what's really going on inside. What makes this so powerful is that INFJs rarely do it with malice. It's an automatic function of how they process the world. But for manipulators, liars, or even people running from their own truths, this mirror becomes unbearable. Being around an INFJ can feel like standing in front of a reflection you can't escape. That's why many say INFJs are like human black mirrors. They don't just see you, they make you see yourself. For some, this is healing and validating. For others, it's deeply uncomfortable, even frightening. And it explains why so many people either bond intensely with INFJs or feel the need to distance themselves from them. They cut off without explaining. One of the most shocking moves an INFJ can make is cutting someone off without offering a detailed explanation. To outsiders, this may seem cold, sudden, or even unfair. But for INFJs, it's the final step in a long, silent process of observation, evaluation, and disappointment. By the time they decide to walk away, they've already tried, often quietly and internally, to give chances, extend empathy, and understand the situation. Once their inner line is crossed, however, they don't feel the need to explain themselves anymore. This behavior often baffles people because INFJs are known as some of the most understanding and compassionate personalities. They listen deeply, they empathize, and they forgive more times than most. So when they finally cut ties, it leaves others wondering, what did I do? Why didn't they tell me? The truth is, INFJs usually did notice every subtle betrayal, manipulation, or lack of respect. They likely gave small hints, pulled back slightly, or mirrored the person's behavior before making the ultimate decision. If those signs were ignored, they see no point in wasting more of their energy on someone who refused to notice. Part of this comes from their deep value of authenticity. INFJs expect relationships, whether friendships, family, or romantic partnerships, to be based on mutual respect and honesty. If someone violates that foundation repeatedly, an INFJ's instinct is not to argue, but to retreat. They believe actions speak louder than words, and their silence sends the strongest message possible. You no longer have access to me. For the person on the receiving end, this cutoff feels abrupt and brutal. But for the INFJ, it's an act of self-preservation. They don't owe endless explanations to people who consistently fail to respect their boundaries or understand their value. And by not explaining, they avoid being pulled back into manipulative cycles or guilt tripping. Ultimately, when an INFJ cuts someone off without explaining, it isn't about punishment, it's about peace. They'd rather walk forward quietly than get trapped justifying why they deserve respect. And in that silence, their absence becomes louder than any confrontation could ever be. They prove you wrong by thriving. When someone misjudges an INFJ, dismissing them as too sensitive, too quiet, or too fragile, they often expect the INFJ to fade into the background, defeated or broken. But here's the hidden truth. INFJs rarely fight back with confrontation. Instead, they respond by thriving in silence. Their revenge isn't loud arguments or dramatic exits, it's transformation. They channel the pain of being underestimated into growth, strength, and unexpected success. This is one of the INFJ's most powerful moves. When you doubt them, you unknowingly fuel their determination. They'll take that doubt, that dismissal, and turn it into quiet motivation. While others waste time gossiping, competing, or underestimating them, INFJs are building. They're learning new skills, mastering their craft, deepening their inner strength, and planning their next move. Then, one day, they reappear, not to explain or justify, but to show, through their thriving, that you were wrong all along. What makes this so shocking is the subtlety of it. INFJs don't announce their plans or seek validation along the way. They grow quietly, almost invisibly, until the results speak for themselves. By the time those who misjudged them realize what's happened, it's too late. The INFJ has already surpassed the expectations set for them and proven beyond words that their resilience is unmatched. In relationships, this thriving looks like emotional recovery and strength that leaves people wondering how they healed so completely. In careers, it shows up as sudden leaps forward, new achievements, creative breakthroughs, or leadership others never saw coming. In personal life, it manifests as peace, balance, and wisdom that make their critics fade into irrelevance. The real sting for those who misjudge an INFJ is that they don't get an explanation, a warning, or even acknowledgement. The INFJ doesn't come back to say, "I told you so." They simply thrive and let their thriving be the answer. That's the ultimate victory, proving people wrong without ever having to prove anything at all. At the end of the day, INFJs don't need to argue, prove, or justify themselves. They hold their power in silence, in observation, in setting boundaries, and in thriving when no one expects it. Every misjudgment, every dismissal, every betrayal only fuels their transformation. And by the time the world realizes, the INFJ has already risen above, stronger and wiser than before. That's why misjudging an INFJ is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. They don't fight you with words. They outlast you with growth. They don't seek revenge through drama. They let their thriving be the answer. And when they walk away, it's not to punish you, it's to protect their peace and step into the life they were meant to live. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Have you ever underestimated an INFJ in your life, only to be shocked when they proved you completely wrong? Share your story in the comments because your experience might just help someone else understand the power of the INFJ mind. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell because we've got even deeper dives into the psychology of INFJs and the hidden strengths people rarely see. Stick around because what's coming next will make you see INFJs in a way you've never imagined.